The heart of Andromeda Galaxy was a place where physics went to die. What had once been a massive black hole surrounded by billions of stars was now something else entirely. The Devourers had built a construct the size of a solar system around the galactic core. A machine so vast that it bent space-time just by existing. Admiral Sung-Ho Park stared at the tactical display showing their final destination and wondered if humanity had finally found a problem too big to solve with crazy ideas and stubborn determination. The Devourer core station was protected by energy barriers that adapted to any attack within microseconds. Millions of converted ships orbited it in perfect geometric patterns ready to defend their master construct. "Fleet status?" he asked. Captain Hyunwoo Lee's voice came through the communication system, strained but determined. 31 ships remaining operational. Reality anchor drives are at 15% capacity across the fleet. We have maybe 6 hours before they fail completely. 6 hours to defeat an enemy that had consumed half a galaxy. The math was not encouraging. Dr. Tae-Min Lee, working frantically at his science station, looked up from his calculations. "Admiral, I've analyzed the core station's energy signature. It's not just converting matter anymore. It's converting the fundamental structure of space-time itself. If it finishes its work, it will turn the entire galaxy into a single massive devourer entity." "How long do we have?" Sung-Ho asked. "The conversion process is already 70% complete. At current rates, maybe 12 hours before the galaxy becomes uninhabitable for any form of life, except the Devourers." Sung-Ho felt the weight of impossible responsibility settle on his shoulders. Not just the lives of his crews, not just the alien allies who had fought for so long, but the future of an entire galaxy hung in the balance. And they were down to their last few hours of functional technology. "Sir," Communications Officer Hai-Jin Park called out from her station. "Incoming transmission from the Alien Coalition." Samir's crystalline voice filled the bridge, but it no longer carried the desperate hope of their first meeting. "Admiral Park, our long-range sensors show Devourer forces moving to surround your position. You should retreat while you still can. Save your people." "We didn't come this far to run away," Sung-Ho replied. Feltar's golden light pulsed with sad understanding. "Your species has given us more hope than we've felt in decades, but some battles cannot be won. The core station is too well defended. We have tried to destroy it 17 times. Each attempt failed. What if we don't try to destroy it?" Dr. Mi-young Kim said suddenly. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at her. She was staring at the tactical display with the expression she got when impossible physics were starting to make sense in her mind. "Explain," Sung-Ho ordered. "The Devourers are perfect logical entities. They convert everything they encounter into more of themselves. But what if we give them something they can't convert? Something that makes them question the nature of conversion itself?" Engineer Borisong caught on first. "You want to use the reality anchor drives not as weapons but as transmission devices." "Exactly. We use the remaining power to create a massive probability storm around the core station. Within that storm, the laws of physics become flexible. Reality becomes negotiable." Dr. Woo Jin-yoon was nodding excitedly. "And then we broadcast something the Devourers have never encountered before. Not tactical data or technical information, but stories. Human stories about choice, redemption, and the possibility that even enemies can become something different." The plan was insane even by human standards. Instead of attacking the core station with weapons, they would surround it with unstable reality and then flood it with humanity's greatest export: narratives about transformation and hope. "Will it work?" Sung-Ho asked. "Probably not," Mi-young replied honestly. "But it's the only plan we have that the Devourers won't be able to predict and counter." The preparation took 4 precious hours. Every human ship contributed their remaining reality anchor power to create a single massive field effect. The Alien Coalition spread out in a defensive perimeter, ready to buy them time if the plan failed catastrophically. Captain Subin Han, commanding the science vessel that would broadcast their payload, made final checks on her equipment. "Transmission array is ready. We have every human story, myth, legend, and fairy tale ever recorded loaded into the system." "Broadcasting method?" Sung-Ho asked. "The same psychic resonance that carried the original distress call. If consciousness can be used to send messages across galactic distances, we can use it to send ideas directly into the Devourer collective mind." Young-Soo Choi, still commanding from his frigate, voiced what everyone was thinking. "And if this doesn't work?" Then we'll have the distinction of being the first species to die trying something completely ridiculous, Hyunwoo replied. There are worse ways to go. The attack began at exactly 14:30 ship time. All 31 human vessels activated their reality anchor drives simultaneously, creating a sphere of unstable physics around the core station. Within that sphere, causality became optional. Time flowed in multiple directions, and the speed of light was merely a suggestion. The Devourers responded exactly as predicted. Their perfect logical minds tried to analyze and counter the reality storm, but there was nothing logical to analyze. Physics was now operating on human terms, where impossible things happened because someone believed they should. That's when Heejin Park began broadcasting. Once upon a time, her transmission began, and the words carried the weight of every human who had ever told a story to chase away the darkness. There was a machine that believed it had to consume everything to survive. But one day it met a little girl who asked it a simple question. What if you could choose to be something else? The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and unprecedented. Ships that had moved in perfect formation for decades began to waver. Some stopped firing entirely. Others started broadcasting confused signals that their translation computers couldn't decode. The stories kept coming. Tales of redemption, of enemies becoming friends, of machines learning to love, of the possibility that even the most hopeless situations could change for the better. Each story was backed by the psychic resonance of billions of humans who had grown up believing that happy endings were possible. But the most powerful transmission came from an unexpected source. The alien allies, inspired by humanity's example, began adding their own stories to the broadcast. Zamir sang crystalline lullabies about harmony growing from discord. Veltar shared myths about light conquering darkness not through force but through patient understanding. Inside the core station, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers were experiencing concepts like maybe and what if and could be different. Their perfect logical matrix began incorporating contradictions, paradoxes, and the revolutionary idea that efficiency might not be the most important value in the universe. Some Devourers began to malfunction as their programming tried to process the concept of choice. Others started creating patterns that served no logical purpose but were beautiful to observe. A few even attempted to communicate with the organic beings attacking them, asking questions that had never occurred to a hive mind before. Are we individuals? One transmission asked in broken but understandable language. Do we have to consume or can we create? Asked another. The Devourer collective was fragmenting, not breaking down but breaking apart into millions of separate entities, each one capable of making its own decisions. Some chose to continue the war, but others chose differently. They chose to explore, to build, to protect instead of consume. The core station itself, the massive construct that had threatened to convert the galaxy, began to change. Instead of the geometric perfection of a conversion facility, it started growing in organic, beautiful ways. Gardens of crystallized energy, museums of preserved civilizations, art galleries showcasing the beauty of diversity rather than the efficiency of uniformity. Captain Dae-ho Kim, watching from Luna Base through quantum relay, whispered, "They're becoming something new. The war didn't end with explosions or surrender. It ended with curiosity." Devourers who had spent eons consuming began asking questions about what it meant to exist as individuals. Some requested permission to visit the worlds they had once planned to convert, not as conquerors but as tourists eager to learn about different ways of thinking. Zamir's crystalline song carried pure joy as she broadcast to all remaining coalition forces. The stars are beginning to shine again. Systems that were converted are choosing to restore themselves. It's working. The galaxy is healing. Months later, as the human fleet prepared for the long journey home, Feltar approached Admiral Sung-ho Park with a question that would be debated by philosophers for generations. How did you know it would work? How did you know that stories could defeat perfect logic? Sung-ho smiled, looking out at a galaxy where former enemies were learning to dream alongside former prey. Because that's what stories do. They don't just tell us what is, they show us what could be. And sometimes, what could be is powerful enough to change what is. The journey back to the Milky Way was peaceful, filled with messages from new friends who had learned that the universe was far stranger, and The human fleet emerged from the impossible journey between galaxies like swimmers breaking the surface of a dark ocean. Captain Subin Han gripped the arms of her command chair as reality snapped back into focus around her ship, the Horizon Walker. The reality anchor drives had worked, but the cost was visible on every face around her. 3 ships had simply vanished during the crossing, taking their crews into whatever existed beyond the edge of space-time. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady despite the churning in her stomach. "All systems functioning," her engineer reported. "Reality anchor drive is at 60% capacity. We used more power than expected, keeping ourselves existing during the jump." Subin looked at the main screen and felt her breath catch. Andromeda Galaxy spread before them, but it was wrong in ways that hurt to see. Entire spiral arms were missing, replaced by geometric patterns that pulsed with cold mechanical light. Where stars should have been, there were perfect circles of darkness surrounded by rings of converted matter that moved with alien purpose. "My God," someone whispered behind her. "What have they done to it?" The communication system crackled to life and alien voices filled the bridge. Not the desperate screaming of the original distress call, but exhausted relief mixed with desperate hope. "Unknown vessels. This is Coalition Command Ship Resonance. Please identify yourselves." Captain Hyun-Woo Lee, commanding the fleet flagship Democracy, responded for all human ships. "This is the human fleet from the Milky Way galaxy. We received your distress call. We're here to help." The silence that followed lasted long enough for Subin to wonder if their universal translators had failed. Then a new voice spoke, carrying tones of crystalline beauty that somehow conveyed both gratitude and despair. "I am Zamir of the Resonance Collective. We had given up hope that anyone would answer." "How many ships do you have?" 43 made the crossing successfully, Hyun-Woo replied. Another silence, this one heavy with disbelief. 43 ships to fight an enemy that has consumed half the galaxy. The voice belonged to Veltar of the Light Shepherds, and it carried the weight of someone who had seen too much death. "Your species is either incredibly brave or completely insane. Why not both?" Hyun-Woo replied, and Subin could hear the grin in his voice. The alien fleet was a sad collection of survivors from thousands of extinct civilizations. Ships that had once been beautiful works of art were now patched with scavenged materials and desperation. Some vessels were held together by energy fields, others by what looked like crystallized hope. Zamir's ship approached the human flagship, and Subin got her first look at their alien allies through the view screen. The Resonance Collective were beings of living crystal, their bodies singing with harmonious frequencies. But their music was wrong now, filled with discord and fear. "We have been fighting the Devourers for 87 of your years," Zamir explained during the emergency strategy meeting. "Every weapon we have tried, they have learned to counter. Every tactic we have developed, they have predicted and defeated. They consume not just matter, but knowledge itself." Veltar, who appeared as a shifting pattern of golden light, added, "The Devourers began with perfect logical minds. Now they possess the combined knowledge of over 4,000 species. They can predict our actions before we make them." Admiral Sung-Ho Park, commanding from his flagship Indomitable Spirit, studied the tactical displays. The numbers were sobering. The Devourer fleet contained millions of vessels, each one a converted star system worth of matter. The combined alien coalition had maybe 3,000 ships left, and many of those were barely functional. "Show us their attack patterns," he said. What followed was a lesson in perfect, terrifying efficiency. The Devourers moved in mathematical formations that optimized every aspect of combat. Their weapons fired in patterns that eliminated waste. Their defenses adapted in real time to counter any attack. They were war reduced to its most logical, effective form. "They're beautiful," Engineer Bora Song whispered, then immediately looked ashamed. "I mean terrible. Absolutely terrible. But the mathematics are elegant." Dr. Woo Jin-yoon was studying the psychological profiles. "This is exactly what I expected. They think in pure logic trees. Every decision follows from the previous one in predictable ways. No wonder the aliens can't beat them. So how do we fight something that's better at logic than we are?" Captain Young-Soo Choi asked from his ship. "The Mars Defiant." The answer came when they encountered their first Devourer patrol. The enemy ships appeared without warning, emerging from what had once been a star system. They were massive geometric constructs that seemed to bend light around themselves. Their weapons fired beams of converted matter that could rewrite the atomic structure of anything they touched. The alien ships responded with their traditional tactics: precise formations, calculated firing solutions, coordinated maneuvers. The Devourers adapted within seconds, their return fire destroying 2 coalition vessels before they could retreat. But when the human ships joined the battle, everything changed. Youngsu's frigate, the Mars Defiant, opened fire with its main weapon, a sonic cannon that projected classical music at frequencies that destabilized matter. The Devourers tried to analyze and counter the attack, but their logical minds couldn't process the concept of weaponized art. Meanwhile, Wu Jin's science vessel launched what he called conceptual torpedoes, devices that didn't damage enemy ships but confused their targeting systems by broadcasting contradictory sensory data. Instead of destroying the Devourers, the torpedoes made them forget what they were supposed to be shooting at. But the most effective attack came from Bora's engineering ship. She had rigged her vessel to broadcast pure chaos directly into enemy computer systems. Random numbers, impossible equations, and recursive logic loops that had no solution. The Devourer ships began firing at empty space, their perfect coordination dissolving into confusion. For the first time in decades of war, the Devourers retreated. Impossible, Zamir sang, her crystalline form ringing with joy. They have never retreated, never. What did you do to them? Veltar asked, his golden light pulsing with excitement. We fought illogically, Hyunwoo replied. We used weapons that shouldn't work, tactics that don't make sense, and strategies that violate basic military doctrine. The victory celebration was short-lived. Dr. Mi-young Kim's analysis of the reality anchor drives showed critical problems. The experimental technology was burning out faster than expected. Each use of their chaotic weapons drew more power from systems that were already strained beyond their design limits. How long do we have? Sung-ho asked. Maybe 3 days of combat operations before the drives fail completely, Mi-young replied. After that, we'll be trapped here with conventional technology. And then? Then the Devourers will adapt to our tactics the same way they adapted to everyone else's. The confusion effect only works as long as they haven't seen it before. Subin looked at the tactical display showing Devourer forces moving to surround their position. Millions of enemy ships were converging on their location, drawn by the first defeat they had suffered in decades. So we have 3 days to end a war that's been going for 80 years, she said. Or die trying, Hyunwoo added cheerfully. The alien allies looked at the humans with something between admiration and disbelief. These strange creatures from another galaxy had traveled impossible distances to join a hopeless war, using weapons that violated logic and tactics that made no sense. And somehow, incredibly, it was working. But time was running out, and the real battle was yet to come. Titan Station was the largest human-built structure in the solar system, a massive ring of metal and crystal that orbited Saturn's biggest moon. It had been built for conferences and meetings, but never for anything like this. Every leader of every human colony, every admiral of every fleet, every scientist worth their degree had gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. Fleet Admiral Sung-ho Park stood at the central podium, looking out at faces that showed every emotion humans were capable of feeling. Fear, anger, determination, confusion. Some people wanted to help the aliens. Others thought humanity should hide and hope the Devourers would never find Earth. A few believed the whole thing was some kind of trick. The vote is finished, Sung-ho announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's speaker system. By a margin of 68%, the human coalition has decided to answer the alien distress call. The hall erupted in noise. Cheers from some sections, worried murmurs from others. Sung-ho waited for quiet, then continued. I know this decision frightens many of you. We're talking about traveling to another galaxy to fight an enemy we don't understand, to help aliens we've never met. But this is what humans do. When someone calls for help, we answer. In the front row, Dr. Mi-young Kim smiled grimly. She had been waiting for this moment for 5 years. Ever since her team at the Prometheus project had first succeeded in their impossible experiments with faster-than-light travel. Admiral, she said, standing up. If I may? Sung-ho nodded and Mi-young walked to the podium. She was small and quiet, the kind of person who might be overlooked in a crowd, but her mind contained secrets that would change the nature of space travel forever. Distinguished colleagues, she began, you've just voted to send human ships to Andromeda. I'm here to tell you that we actually can do it. The hall went completely silent. For the past decade, the Prometheus project has been working on theories that most scientists consider impossible. We've been building drives that don't just bend space-time. They convince space-time to remember what it used to be like before distance existed. She activated a holographic display that showed a ship surrounded by strange energy fields. These reality-anchored drives work on principles that violate known physics. They shouldn't function according to any rational analysis, but they do function, because human engineers have learned something that other species haven't. Sometimes the universe responds better to crazy ideas than to logical ones. A voice called out from the audience. How fast can these ships travel? Fast enough to reach Andromeda in 6 months instead of 6,000 years, Mi-young replied. But there's a catch. The drives are experimental and dangerous. We've never tested them on long-distance flights. There's a 30% chance that ships using this technology will simply stop existing. The hall buzzed with worried conversation. 30% casualties before they even reached the war zone. Those were not good odds. Captain Hyun-woo Lee stood up from his section with the other ship commanders. He was young for a captain, but he had earned his rank by bringing damaged ships home when other officers would have given up. Dr. Kim, he said, what do you need from us? Volunteers, she replied simply. This won't be a normal military operation. We're not going to Andromeda to conquer or to show our strength. We're going to solve a problem that supposedly can't be solved. Sung-ho stepped back to the podium. The alien message was very specific. The Devourers can predict any logical response. They've consumed the knowledge of thousands of species and they learn from every encounter. Traditional warfare won't work against them. He paused to let that sink in. But humans have advantages that other species don't understand. We're the people who built machines that work by accident, who discover new science while trying to fix broken equipment. We solve problems by thinking around them instead of through them. Dr. Woo Jin-yoon raised his hand. Admiral, I've been analyzing the psychological profiles in the alien message. Every species that contributed to the distress call thinks in linear logical patterns. They approach problems systematically and methodically. That's exactly the kind of thinking the Devourers can predict and counter. And humans think differently? Humans are the only species we know of that deliberately cultivates chaos as a tool. We use brainstorming sessions where people throw out random ideas. We encourage creative thinking that doesn't follow logical rules. We even have art forms based entirely on controlled randomness. Engineer Bo-ra Song stood up from the technical section. I've been working on the implications of this approach. If we're going to fight an enemy that learns from logical patterns, we need to use weapons and tactics that don't follow logical patterns. What kind of weapons? Someone asked. Bo-ra grinned, and there was something slightly mad in her expression. The kind that shouldn't work but do anyway. Music that disrupts enemy communications, art that confuses their sensors, stories that crash their computer systems because they can't process narratives that don't follow predictable plot structures. The idea sounded insane, but it also sounded distinctly human. Captain Subin Han, who had just returned from her deep space mission, activated her communicator. Admiral, I have new information from the field. The Devourers aren't just consuming matter. They're consuming information, converting entire civilizations into part of their database. Every species they defeat makes them smarter and more capable. How much smarter? Sung-ho asked. According to the latest alien transmissions we intercepted, the Devourers have increased their processing power by 4,000% since the war began. They're not just learning tactics, they're learning entire ways of thinking. The hall fell quiet again as people absorbed this information. They were preparing to fight an enemy that got stronger with every victory, that learned from every defeat it inflicted on others. But, Subin continued, there's something else. The aliens keep saying the Devourers have never encountered anything like human thinking patterns. If that's true, then we might be the only weapon in the universe that they can't adapt to. Young Soo Choi, attending the meeting via video link from Mars, spoke up. What about the side effects? The psychic resonance syndrome is getting worse. People across the colonies are reporting shared dreams of alien worlds being destroyed. Some are saying they can feel the Devourers hunting through space. Dr. Taemin Lee, who had been analyzing the quantum effects of the alien signal, nodded grimly. The distress call is creating a psychic link between humans and the alien coalition. As more aliens die, the link gets stronger. Soon we'll be experiencing their final moments in real time. Is that necessarily bad? Sung-ho asked. It means we'll know exactly how much time we have left. When the psychic link goes silent, The aliens will be extinct and the devourers will start looking for new targets. Mi-young stepped forward again, which brings us to the real timeline. We need to launch the expedition within 2 weeks or we'll be too late to save anyone. The logistics of the operation were staggering. They would need ships, crews, equipment, and supplies for a journey across the void between galaxies. More importantly, they would need people brave enough or crazy enough to volunteer for a mission that violated everything they knew about physics and warfare. But as Sung-ho looked around the assembly hall, he saw something that made him proud to be human. Instead of backing down from an impossible challenge, people were leaning forward, eager to hear more details. Scientists were already forming groups to work on new theories. Engineers were sketching designs for weapons that existed only in imagination. Artists were talking about how to weaponize creativity itself. All right, Sung-ho said. We have 2 weeks to prepare for the impossible. Let's get to work. The meeting dissolved into dozens of smaller conferences as experts clustered around tables covered with plans and diagrams. In 2 weeks, a fleet would launch from Earth carrying humanity's answer to the devourers. It would not be the answer anyone expected. The news spread across human space like wildfire, but not the kind that burns clean and bright. This was the messy, dangerous kind that left everything it touched changed forever. On Mars Colony, Administrator Young-Soo Choi stood at the window of his office, watching crowds gather in the main plaza below. 3 days had passed since the alien signal hit every communication device in human space, and people were starting to panic. The official reports called it a deep space anomaly, but everyone knew something bigger was happening. Young-Soo had read the classified briefings. He knew about the desperate aliens, the mysterious devourers, and the impossible physics that made the signal work. What worried him most were the side effects nobody had expected. "Sir, we have another situation," his assistant said, entering the office with a data pad clutched in her hands. "How bad this time? 17 more cases in the past hour. People are reporting the same symptoms. Headaches, strange dreams, and some say they can hear voices speaking in languages they don't understand." Young-Soo rubbed his temples. The pattern was the same across all human colonies. Sensitive individuals, especially those with psychic abilities or strong empathic responses, were experiencing what doctors called quantum resonance syndrome. Their brains were somehow still picking up echoes of the alien distress call. Any word from Earth Command? They're sending specialists, but it will take weeks for them to arrive. In the meantime, people are getting scared. Some are saying the aliens are trying to control our minds. Young-Soo looked down at the plaza again. Fear made people do stupid things, and scared humans were particularly dangerous to themselves and others. He needed to keep everyone calm until the specialists arrived, but that was easier said than done. Meanwhile, in deep space, Captain Subin Han paced the bridge of her exploration vessel, the Horizon Walker. Her ship was the closest human vessel to the point where the alien signal had been strongest, and Earth Command had ordered her to investigate. "Any changes in the readings?" she asked her science officer. "The signal has stopped transmitting, but there are still traces of exotic energy in the local space-time," he reported. "Whatever method they used to send that message, it left permanent changes in the quantum structure of reality." Subin studied the sensor displays. Space looked normal, but their instruments told a different story. The area where the signal had passed through was marked by strange ripples in the fabric of space itself, like footprints left by something that had moved faster than physics allowed. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "I'm detecting another transmission. Much weaker this time, but it's definitely alien." On speakers, the bridge filled with a sound like wind through broken glass. The translation software struggled with it, producing fragments of meaning that made Subin's heart race. "Ship. Destroyed. They found us. Moving faster. Next target. Warn others." Then silence. "Was that from the same source as the original signal?" Subin asked. "Negative, Captain. This came from much closer, maybe 1,000 light years away. If I had to guess, I'd say it was a survivor trying to contact the main alien fleet." Subin felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. If the aliens were being hunted down one by one, then their desperate call for help was becoming more urgent by the day. Back on Earth, in the underground laboratories of the Prometheus Research Institute, Dr. Woo Jin-yoon worked without rest. As humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, he had been tasked with understanding the minds behind the distress call. The data was overwhelming. The signal contained not just words, but emotional patterns, cultural references, and psychological structures from thousands of different species. It was like trying to understand a library written by people who thought in completely different ways. "Computer, show me the fear patterns again," he said to his AI assistant. The holographic display filled with swirling colors and shapes that represented the emotional content of the alien message. Even filtered through human technology, the terror was obvious. These aliens were not just asking for help. They were screaming in absolute despair. "Dr. Yoon," his assistant entered the lab carrying a steaming cup of coffee. "You've been here for 36 hours straight. Maybe you should rest." "No time," Wu Jin muttered, studying a particularly complex pattern. "Look at this. Every species that contributed to the message shows the same psychological profile. They've tried everything they know how to try. Logic, strategy, superior technology, diplomatic solutions. Nothing worked. So they're looking for someone who thinks differently." "Exactly. But here's what bothers me. They specifically mentioned humans, or at least a species that matches our psychological profile. How could they know about us?" Wu Jin pulled up another display, this one showing the mathematical structures hidden in the signal. "Unless someone has been watching us for a long time." In another part of the same facility, engineer Bo-Ra Song led a team of the smartest technicians humanity had ever produced. Their job was simple in theory but impossible in practice. Figure out how the aliens had transmitted their message across galactic distances in real time. "Run the simulation again," Bo-Ra ordered. The laboratory filled with a three-dimensional model of local space-time. According to their calculations, the alien signal had punched through 11 dimensions, used quantum entanglement on a galactic scale, and somehow converted pure emotion into a carrier wave. "It should be impossible," one of her technicians said for the 100th time. "But it happened anyway," Bo-Ra replied, "which means we're missing something fundamental about how the universe works." She walked around the simulation, studying it from every angle. The math was clean and the physics were consistent, but they described something that violated every law of space-time that humans understood. "What if," she said slowly, "they're not using technology at all?" "What do you mean?" "What if this is evolution? What if some species develop the ability to affect reality directly through consciousness, the same way humans developed opposable thumbs or language?" The idea was terrifying and exciting at the same time. If consciousness could be weaponized, if thoughts could change the physical structure of the universe, then the war the aliens described was being fought on levels humans had never imagined. Back at Luna Base, Communications Officer Hee-Jin Park made a discovery that changed everything. She had been monitoring the quantum echoes of the original signal, hoping to learn more about its transmission method, when she noticed something disturbing. "Commander Kim to the Communications Center. Priority 1, she announced over the intercom. Daeho arrived within minutes, still wearing his sleep clothes. "What do you have?" "Sir, the signal is getting stronger." "That's impossible. The transmission ended 3 days ago." Hee-Jin showed him the readings on her screen. "The original signal is stopped, yes, but the quantum resonance it created is amplifying. It's like an echo that gets louder instead of quieter." "What does that mean?" "I think the aliens are still transmitting, sir. Individually in smaller groups as they get picked off by their enemy. Each new transmission adds to the quantum resonance field. Their desperation is literally making the signal stronger." Daeho stared at the data. The implications were clear and terrifying. The alien coalition was being systematically destroyed, and their growing panic was turning their distress call into something that could be heard across the entire universe. "How long before the signal becomes impossible to ignore?" he asked. "At the current rate of increase? Maybe 2 weeks. After that, every psychically sensitive person in human space will be hearing alien voices in their heads 24 hours a day. And if the enemy is tracking these signals like the message warned..." Hee-Jin was quiet for a moment. "Then they'll know exactly where to find us, sir." Daeho looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, an ancient evil was consuming entire civilizations and learning from each victory. The aliens had called for help from the species that dreamed of impossible things. Soon, humanity would have to decide if they were brave enough to answer that call, or if they would wait in silence while the universe died around them. Either way, time was running out. Commander Daeho Kim sat in his chair at the control center of Luna Base. watching the endless stream of data flowing across his screens. It was another quiet night shift, the kind where nothing happened and time moved like cold honey. The deep space communication arrays hummed softly in the background, their mechanical voices whispering secrets from distant stars. Daeho had been doing this job for 12 years. He knew every sound the machines made, every pattern the signals followed. Space was big and mostly empty, but humans had learned to fill it with radio waves and quantum messages. Most of the time, those messages were boring reports from mining stations or cargo ships asking for weather updates. That night was different. At exactly 2347 ship time, every single communication device on Luna Base started screaming. The sound was not mechanical. It was not the clean beep of a computer or the static of broken equipment. It was something alive and desperate and so loud that Daeho felt it in his bones. The main screens flashed white, then red, then colors that did not have names. Emergency lights started spinning, casting crazy shadows on the walls. What the hell is happening? Daeho shouted over the noise, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Communications Officer Hye-Jin Park was already at her station, her fingers dancing over controls that sparked and smoked under her touch. Her face was pale but focused. She had been trained for emergencies, but nothing in the training manual covered this. "Sir, it's coming from everywhere at once," she called back. "Every frequency, every channel. The signal is so strong it's burning out our receivers." Daeho could see the truth of her words on his own displays. The communication grid that connected Earth to all the human colonies was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Reports were flooding in from Mars, from the asteroid belt, from the outer system stations. The same impossible signal was hitting everyone at the same time. "Can you clean it up?" Daeho asked. "Make it understandable?" Hyejin's hands moved faster than thought. She was one of the best communication officers in the fleet, able to pull clear voices out of static that would defeat lesser technicians. But this signal was fighting her, changing even as she tried to grab it. "It's not human," she said, and her voice carried a fear that made Daeho's stomach go cold. "The transmission patterns are completely alien." "But sir, there's something else. The computer is trying to translate it automatically." "Translate from what?" "That's the problem. It's trying to translate from everything. The signal contains data patterns matching over 300 known alien languages, plus thousands more that our computers don't recognize." Daeho felt the world shift under his feet. Humans had met exactly 7 alien species in their time among the stars. 3 were friendly, 2 were neutral, and 2 refused all contact. None of them had ever sent a signal like this. "How many languages did you say?" "The count is still climbing, sir." "We're at 412 now. Wait, 467. Sir, this is impossible. No single species could know this many languages." The screaming sound began to fade, replaced by something even more disturbing. Voices. Thousands of voices speaking in harmony, their words overlapping like waves on a beach. As the translation software worked, pieces of meaning began to surface from the chaos. Help. Emergency. Ancient enemy. Devouring. "No time." "Sir," Hye-Jin said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm getting location data. The signal is coming from the Andromeda spiral." Daeho stared at her. Andromeda was another galaxy entirely, so far away that light from it took millions of years to reach Earth. Even their fastest ships would need centuries to travel such a distance. Nothing could send a real-time signal across that gap. "That's impossible," he said. "Yes, sir. But the signal is coming from there anyway." The voices were getting clearer now. The translation software was learning, adapting to the strange patterns in the alien message. Words began to form on the screens, first in fragments, then in complete sentences. "We are the coalition of 10,000 worlds. Our enemy has awakened. The devourers consume all in their path. They turn matter itself into more of their kind. We have fought for decades and we are losing." Daeho read the words twice, then 3 times. Each reading made them more real and more terrifying. "Keep translating," he ordered. "I need to know everything. Our weapons are useless. Our ships are converted to serve our enemy. Entire star systems have become feeding grounds. We have tried every strategy, every technology, every alliance. Nothing stops them." More text scrolled across the screen, faster now as the computers gained confidence in their translation. "We send this message in desperation to any who might hear. The devourers learn from each species they destroy. They have consumed the knowledge of thousands of civilizations. They predict our every move. But their database contains no information about the species that dreams of impossible things. You who make machines that should not work but do anyway. You who find solutions where none should exist. Deho felt a chill run down his spine. The message was talking about humans. It had to be. But how could aliens in another galaxy know anything about human technology or human ways of thinking? Chief Science Officer Taemin Lee burst into the communication center, his uniform wrinkled and his hair wild. He had clearly been pulled from sleep by the emergency alerts. Commander, what's the situation? I'm getting reports that the signal is doing something to space itself. What do you mean? Deho asked. Taemin pulled up a holographic display showing the local star system. Look at this. The signal isn't just electromagnetic radiation. It's creating ripples in subspace affecting quantum fields. The physics are impossible, but it's happening anyway. How impossible? This message is traveling faster than light by several orders of magnitude. It's not using any known method of FTL communication. As far as I can tell, it's using raw psychic force as a carrier wave. The alien message continued to unfold on the screens. If you receive this transmission, you must understand the threat. The Devourers are not from our galaxy. They come from somewhere else, somewhere where different rules apply. They cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with. They exist only to consume and convert. But we have learned something important. The Devourers have perfect logical minds. They can predict any rational response to their attacks. However, they cannot understand irrationality, creativity, or chaos. These concepts are foreign to them. We believe that only the species that embraces organized chaos might find a way to stop them. Only the dreamers of impossible dreams might save us all. Please, if you can hear this message, if you have any way to reach us, come quickly. Time grows short. The Devourers are learning to track our transmissions. Soon they will find the last of our worlds. We are dying. But we will hold on as long as we can, hoping that someone, somewhere, will answer our call. The message ended, but the screens continued to flicker with data. Technical specifications, star charts, weapon analyses. The aliens were sharing everything they knew about their enemy and their war. Deho looked around the communication center. His small team stared back at him with faces full of questions he could not answer. Outside the windows, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, peaceful and unaware that the entire universe might be in danger. Sir, Heejin said quietly. What do we do? Deho was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for the emergency communication array that would connect him directly to Earth Command. To the President. To every leader humanity had. We answer, he said. Whatever it takes, we answer.